Welcome into a new season and a new feature here on PowerMizzou.com. This is the Yuengling PowerMizzou.com preview show every single week this season, or at least every single week when Missouri has a game. We're going to talk to somebody much more familiar with Mizzou's opponent than I am. I'm Gabe DeArmond. We'll get to our guest in just a minute. Once again, this year, we're proud to be brought to you every single week, pregame and postgame, by our friends at America's oldest brewery. That is Yuengling. I've been to the physical location in Tampa. They've got one in Pennsylvania. If you can't get there, visit them at yuengling.com. Always enjoy responsibly. Yuengling is available all over the state of Missouri. Make sure to pick some up on your way into Columbia Thursday night, getting ready for Mizzou and Murray State. And speaking of Murray State, our guest this week is Murray State racer, radio play-by-play man, Neal Bradley. Neal, I know you guys are headed to Columbia tomorrow afternoon, so appreciate you taking a few minutes before that happens.
Glad to be with you today.
So let's start with this. On Sunday, we talked to Eli Drinkwitz, and he said basically that he could tell us nothing about Murray State because all the players were new, all the coaches were new. So what's your offseason been like trying to get to know this roster and this coaching staff?
I'm right there with him. I don't know much about them either. And to be honest, it's been an ongoing issue for a few years. It isn't anything new, but our practice jerseys don't match up with our actual game jerseys. So I can tell you 19 looks pretty good. He can catch the ball. Don't know who he is, though. So, I mean, it's usually, you got, especially at our level, you got 20 new guys a year that you have to learn. And we have 65. We have a defense. We're going to have 9 guys on defense that never made a tackle for us last year, starting for us. Never played a down for us last season. We have the most experienced quarterback on the team starting and the least experienced running back starting. So we're at both ends of that. But usually I could come on here any year other than this one. This is my 32nd, I think, season of doing this, and give you a pretty good idea of what to expect. This isn't really one of those years, unfortunately.
So your 32nd year, you fully know what you're doing. But I went when I was in college. I heard Bob Costas speak one time, and he said his first radio assignment was a Syracuse minor league hockey game when he was in college. And he said, I only knew one player in that game, and that player had the night of his life. So if you can just find like 3 guys, those guys are going to do everything on Thursday night.
Well, that's what I hope. I mean, when you know very little, you at least memorize the skill positions and someone you think might be the leading tackler. And more often than not, as a play-by-play guy, that will serve you well. But then there's always that one that's going to jump up and bite you. And like, where did this come from? And if that happens on the positive side, that's good. But, even with Missouri, there's a little bit of that, like on the defensive side. I don't know a whole lot about them in terms of what I'm going to see. Offensively, there's not a ton of question marks. So, but the prep's been a whole bunch easier from that standpoint than it has been for the racers. And I don't ever recall that happening. Usually I know a lot more about my team than the opposition. This is not one of those times.
Right. Obviously the transfer portal and all the effects it's been the talk of every college football team at every level for 2 or 3 years now. But I mean, in talking to whether it's athletic department people or football people, how difficult is that to deal with at the FCS level where, look, you kind of know if you've got a kid that's really good, he's probably not going to stay there. And so, like you said, 65 new guys. I mean, Eli Drinkwitz and SEC coaches joke about a new team every year, but legitimately at that level, that's kind of what guys are going to deal with, right?
It is, and I think that takes adjustments on the coaching staff's part. I think this is the way it's going to be, at least for the foreseeable future. I mean, it can always change. I know that, but coaches have to adjust. And I think we're already seeing that right now. We're seeing coaches not go after those really talented freshmen as much. They're just waiting to see what comes in the portal and go after more experienced players. Because as you said, we had one last year that's playing for you this season. Ryan Phillips had a terrific season as a punter. earned all league accolades. And, the NIL plays a role in that. He's headed off to Missouri. We certainly wish him the best, but that's part of football. But the other part of football is we get to cobble a few of those from some of the other schools. Now, the quality we get isn't as good because the rule that they changed for immediate eligibility for FBS transfers certainly hurt. There's been times in the past we've got some terrific talent because of the one-year sit-out rule. That's gone. We still get some talent, but it's not quite to the level that it was a few years ago.
Yeah, and I assume a lot of the incoming transfers are either from other FCS schools, or now if they're coming from SBSF schools, they're probably not coming from the SEC and the Big 12 as much as they're coming from maybe kind of those group of 5 smaller conferences. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty much right on the head. I mean, we have a few guys, they'll say, yeah, well, he came from Pittsburgh. But I mean, he never saw the field or anything like that. I mean, he was on the team. But in years past, we've had players who had significant playing time. They just saw writing on the wall, hey, I'm going to get beat out, probably going to be third string. I want to play a lot this year. And they would go to an FCS school. That doesn't happen anymore. Those players are transferred to another FBS school at this point. So the NIL part here doesn't really play a role in transferring to another FCS school, but you get the elites. We lost Cole Rusk this past year. He was probably one of our top 3 players that tied in. He goes to an FBS school as well. So that does happen, but right now it's part of football. And as I said, unless something changes in a few years, you're going to have head coaches. This is the way you coach. It's part of preparing your team. You're going to have a bunch of guys you're going to lose to the portal. You're going to get a bunch from the portal, and you hope to snag a few freshmen in there that you can at least develop and get some good out of, perhaps before they decide to go off somewhere.
Yeah, kind of an interesting part of Missouri's schedule. I just actually learned this earlier today. The first 2 weeks, they're actually going to face former South Carolina assistants as head coaches, because next week they've got Pete Limbo in Buffalo. So what have you gotten to know about Jody Wright and kind of what his approach is and just him as a guy since he took the job? Have you had much of a chance to get to know him yet?
Yeah, I really have. And he reminds me a lot of Houston Nutt, who really injected a lot of enthusiasm into our program. My first 3 seasons as play-by-play guy, I went 2-9, 3-8, 2-9. Then Houston Nutt comes in, and you saw gradual improvement. And then I believe it was 1995, you go from a 5-win season to an unbeaten season. So that's how quickly he was able to transform it. But the first thing he did on day 1 was generate enthusiasm. That's what Jody Wright has done. I mean, he's everywhere in the community. He'll go any place to talk about his team. He has brought excitement, and I'm as excited as I've ever been since maybe back in the mid-'90s because of the enthusiasm that Jody Wright brings. He has a tremendous coaching staff ahead of him that he went out and recruited, and they just went out and tried to make the team better. I know they feel they're in the best league in FCS football, and they know they have to get a lot better to compete. And at least I believe they've taken initial steps to make that happen.
Yeah, 4 ranked FCS teams in the Missouri Valley on their schedule. Both, I know North Dakota State, South Dakota State. They're all always good. One of them often plays here. So given the difficulty of that league schedule, how long does it take at that level? Like what are the goals for Murray State to kind of get it turned around, and whether turned around means, a winning season or whatever that might mean? Is this a quick fix, or is it a longer process?
Probably a 3 or 4 year plan. That would be my guess. The immediate thing I noticed that last year, our first season to play in the league, was we were immediately slower and smaller at almost every position. We couldn't block for our running backs, couldn't stop on the other side. And that was very noticeable. I mean, some of the venues we went to, we weren't far off the field. And just the eye test, you could see, my gosh, this is like playing maybe a lower level FBS team. I mean, they're good. And that's going to be an issue that I think we're going to deal with. However, I've noticed already this season, we're a little bit faster and a little bit bigger. I just don't think that's something you can do all at once. It will be a process, but I do believe that there will be a nice step forward. 2 wins last year. If they could get to 4, 5, or anything beyond that, to me, that's going to be a mega successful season for the Racers.
This opening game, these are always kind of weird games. I know I read Murray State's played 9 SEC teams in the past. It's kind of an agreement where, hey, the big school kind of funds the program for the
Yeah.
year, and generally I mean, an FCS upset happens just often enough that people keep saying, well, hey, we need to do this, and I always want to be like respectful, because hey, everybody at Murray State puts in every bit as much time as anybody at Missouri does, and
True.
their goal is to win every single game they play. Even they probably come into this understanding that might not be a super realistic goal. So what is a realistic goal for Murray State here on Thursday night?
Well, to me, and the coach hasn't told me this, but I've called a lot of these games. To me, you want to score, you don't want to get shut out, and try to keep the team out of the 50s and above. And especially when you're playing a good team. I mean, there have been years when the race has been really good, and Missouri's been really bad. I don't know that we would have beaten them, but I don't know that we would have lost by more than 3 touchdowns. And then I was raised in Ohio from 3 months old to 7. And then last year saw the Cotton Bowl, thought, oh, the Buckeyes hadn't been a great season for them by their standards, but they get Missouri and went, oh my, we play that team next year. And Ohio State lost to them 14-3. So I knew it was, we had our work cut out for them. This isn't the old Missouri team. But the thing is, they put their money into it. They put a lot of effort into it. They've gotten better in the SEC. And my goodness, they're a lot of fun to watch. Unless they're playing Ohio State, I didn't really enjoy that much. But I saw them a couple of times last season. This is a really fun bunch to watch. And offensively, as long as they're not playing against my team, I'll tell you, fans are, I think, in for a real treat at Mizzou. Now, can the Racers win? I don't know that the Racers can win the game. It would be up to Missouri to lose it. And I don't think under their head coach and how well that team is coached, how well they play, I just cannot see that happening.
Yeah, they've actually played 2 times before, and Murray State's had the misfortune of running up against pretty good Missouri teams. 2013, Missouri won the SEC East. They played that year, and then the other time, and I didn't remember the 2013 one, but I remember this one. They played at Missouri in 2006, which was the first career start for a kid named Chase Daniels. So things kind of took off there for Missouri pretty well.
Yeah, I do remember that one. The 2013 one, I was actually hoping for maybe some thunderstorms that would call the game, because the Racers were actually ahead 14-13 after the first quarter. Now, we got skunked from there. It was one-sided, but for one quarter, you got the crawl across the screen, Murray State leading Missouri, but it was pretty downhill fast at that point.
When you talk to coaches and some of the players that are in a situation like this where they kind of understand the reality of it, but look, they're competitors, right? I mean, nobody goes into a game that when you're covering Murray State, when you're calling those games, what's the attitude of that team coming into a game like this, or the one later in the year at Kentucky?
Well, they always want to, I mean, you're, as a competitor, as you said, you're taught to win. So they're going to get on the bus with the mentality of winning. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. However, do know what they're going up against, but they have to play to the best of their ability. I mean, if they turn it over, they have a bunch of penalties, things of that sort, missed tackles. They're not going to beat anybody. They're not going to beat anyone at all. So you want to be solid in that area, then let the chips fall where they may. But I think that's the biggest thing they want to do. They want to be respectable, represent the college in a great way, so that even when the fans for Mizzou leave, even if it's a big win, so, hey, that Murray State team played hard. They were good sports. They didn't do anything that embarrassed their school. To me, that's the goal. That, and be sure that check clears, and we've never had an issue with that.
Look, if it doesn't, Missouri's got a lot of problems, because they're trying to build a $250 million stadium thing here in a couple of years. They need more money than that.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, there actually are quite a few connections between these two schools. I learned by reading the game notes that Don Farrow's brother is a Hall of Fame coach at Murray State. And I'm going to throw this one at you kind of out of left field. I'm not sure. I mean, I know obviously everybody around the football program and stuff, but Murray State's AD, Nico Yanko, spent a lot of years here at Missouri and knows a lot of people. I actually had just texted with him not too long ago, and he's going to be in town. Curious if in your role you get to know him much or spend much time around him.
You don't get to spend much time around Nico. Nico is a money-raising maniac. I've never seen anything like him. He succeeded at every level. I think if we get $1 million or more donation over 10 years, that's pretty good. He has 7 this year. I don't know how he does it. The most amazing guy I've ever seen. So I do see him occasionally, but he's a hard worker. He hires really good people, says, here's your job, go do it. I'm going to go out and raise the money for the program. And he certainly does that. He also brings a lot of energy, and being a former football guy. I even called his games when he was playing quarterback for the Racers. He makes me feel like this is going to be something fun over the next few years. And the start of it is right now in our 100th year of football at Murray State.
Last thing for you, do appreciate you taking the time. Just curious, I think most people, and I'm certainly in this bunch, know Murray State and really successful basketball program. Just what's can you describe that fan base and what it's like in the immediate area in the state, not just for basketball, but for the entire athletic department?
For the most part, I'll be honest, it's been a basketball school more than a football school. But when our football teams are good, fans turn out. We've never drawn 13,000 for a basketball game at Murray State. Of course, our arena doesn't hold that. That would be one reason. But we have for football. So when the football teams are good, they turn out. That's what Jody says. He actually says and believes we're going to sell this out before I'm done. And all right, let's see it. I'm fine with that. But it's more basketball. It's a lot of that success. You get a few upsets in the NCAA tournament, and you have a kid named John Morant who kind of comes out of nowhere, and he turns out to be a pretty good ball player. Things I've never seen before, that you have fans lining up in opposing arenas to get pictures made with him for 30, 40 minutes after a game. I've never seen anything like that in my life. So a lot of basketball, but I think a lot of great football years looming for Murray State.
See, I can date myself now, because if somebody says Murray State to me, the first name that comes to my head is Popeye Jones. So
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, he was the first guy on the map. Someone told me they were in Puerto Rico in a cab. They had Murray State gear up, and the taxi guy just, "Oh, Popeye Jones." He goes, "That's right, Popeye
That's
Jones."
awesome.
So he knew
That's awesome. Well, Neal, I appreciate your time, man. I hope you all have a safe trip up here, and catch you in the press box maybe on Thursday night.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me today.
All right, thank you. That is Neal Bradley, the radio play-by-play voice of the Murray State Racers, who will be at Furrow Field on Thursday night, 7 p.m. kickoff, SEC Network. Obviously, we're going to have full coverage over the next couple days leading up to this, full coverage Thursday night, and then post-game show live from the press box for you, brought to you, as this show is, by our friends at Yuengling, America's oldest brewery. Again, go to Yuengling.com, but it's way easier than that, guys. Go to a gas station, go to a grocery store, go anywhere in the state of Missouri. I'm not going to say anywhere. There's probably somewhere that doesn't have it. Most places you go pick up some Yuengling, bring it down to Columbia with you on Thursday evening. Have a little tailgate. Lots open at 3. Mizzou, Murray State. Hey, we think we know how this one's going to go, but why they play the games, right? You never really know how it's going to go. But thanks to our friends at Yuengling for being on board for another season. Thanks to you guys for hanging out with us. Like, comment, subscribe, hit all the buttons that YouTube wants you to hit, so more people are going to find these shows throughout the season. We're ready to get going. It has been 8 months, I think, exactly when they kick off Thursday night since the Cotton Bowl. Ready to go here in this 2024 season. Hope you will come along for the ride with us here on YouTube at PowerMizzou.com. And we'll catch you next time.